Hello, my name is Patrick Yankee, author of Defeating the Culture of Death. Now, the book isn't about understanding the culture of death. It's not understanding the roots and how we got to where we are. It's simply about defeating it. It's meant to be the tip of the spear for finally ending what we all see around us. This is primarily for a Catholic audience. It's about the Catholic vote. But it applies to everyone who's interested in the issues of life, especially our fellow Christians. We believe in the sanctity of life, created in the image and likeness of God. And this is about intrinsic evil. And what is intrinsic evil? Well, the Catechism of the Catholic Church tells us there are concrete acts that it is always wrong to choose, because their choice entails a disorder of the will, a moral evil. One may not do evil so that good may result from it. Oftentimes I hear people say, well, I want to be able to vote for this politician. He may support abortion, but he supports other things that are good. That might be the case. But it is always evil to support evil so that good may result from it. So let's talk about abortion. Regarding a law permitting abortions, the Church teaches that it is never licit to obey it, or to take part in a propaganda campaign in favor of such a law, or to vote for it. Abortion is the intentional and direct killing of an innocent human being, and is therefore homicide. The unborn child is always an innocent party, and no law may permit the taking of his life. Even when a child is conceived through rape or incest, the fault is not the child, who is an innocent party and does not deserve to die for the sins of others. Now, in the Democratic Party platform on page 37, they say, Democrats are committed to protecting and advancing reproductive health rights and justice. We believe unequivocally, like the majority of Americans, that every woman should have access to quality reproductive health care services, including safe and legal abortion, regardless of where she lives, how much money she makes, or how she is insured. What that means is your tax dollars will be used to support abortion if you elect Democrat Party politicians. More from page 37. We will continue to stand up to Republican efforts to defund Planned Parenthood health centers, which provide critical health services to millions of people. We will continue to oppose and seek to overturn federal and state laws and policies that impede a woman's access to abortion, including by repealing the Hyde Amendment. It's important to note, the Hyde Amendment is a legislative provision barring the use of certain federal funds to pay for abortion, except to save the life of the mother or if the pregnancy arises from incest or rape. They will remove those restrictions, and your tax dollars across this country will support abortion. So what about Planned Parenthood? Does Planned Parenthood provide critical services? Well, what they say they do is providing contraception services, testing and treatment for STDs, cancer screenings, and a whole host of other things. That is what they say they do. But when you look in their financial statements as recently as 2010, what you find is what they actually do is abortion. 91% of their activity is geared toward abortion. And by the way, most of the rest of the activity, the prenatal services, those are geared toward preparing for the abortion. The prenatal services they provide are the preparations for abortion. So how critical is Planned Parenthood to health services? Less than 1% of Americans actually use their services. Planned Parenthood can be easily replaced. Now, if you live in the state of North Carolina, as I do, here's what it says on page 9 of our party platform. Furthermore, abortion must be safe, legal, accessible to all North Carolina women, regardless of ability to pay. Therefore, the state abortion fund should be fully funded and accessible to indigent women. The state abortion fund must be fully funded. Again, your tax dollars supporting intrinsic evil if you vote for Democrats in the state of North Carolina. Hillary Clinton says her litmus test for judges, and don't forget, it's the Supreme Court that gave us Roe versus Wade. Her litmus test is that they will back up and continue to support Roe versus Wade. That is the first qualification of a judge for her. Tim Kaine, who calls himself a Catholic, as her vice presidential nominee, and when asked if taxpayer funds should be used to support abortion, said yes. He also supports not weakening or repealing Roe versus Wade. So the candidates support the platform, and their litmus test for any judge is to make sure that Roe versus Wade stays intact. What about euthanasia? Often disguised by the name mercy killing, euthanasia is also a form of homicide. No person has a right to take his own life, and no one has the right to take the life of any innocent person. In euthanasia, the ill or elderly are killed by action or omission out of a misplaced sense of compassion. But true compassion cannot include intentionally doing something intrinsically evil. When you look at what happens with euthanasia, we say nobody has a right to take their own life. That's obviously a church understanding, because taking your own life, there's no way it can be punished in this life. What happens with euthanasia in this country is that the Democratic Party is encouraging doctors to change their understanding of the Hippocratic Oath, which says first do no harm, to an understanding of when and how you can kill your patient. And everywhere in this country where politics and the right to die movement has been merging, it has all come through the Democratic Party. In states where it's advanced to the legislature, it has done so with Democrat majorities over the objection of Republicans. In place where you have Republican majorities, it's been done through the courts over the objections of Republicans. What about embryonic stem cell research? Human embryos are human beings. Respect for the dignity of the human being excludes all experimental manipulation or exploitation of the human embryo. Recent scientific advances show that medical treatments that researchers hope to develop from experimentation on embryonic stem cells can often be developed by using adult stem cells instead. In fact, there have been no beneficial treatments to come from experimentation on human embryos. There have been over 72 cures and treatments to come from adult stem cells. Adult stem cells can be obtained without doing harm to the adults from whom they come. There is no valid medical argument in favor of using embryonic stem cells. And even if there were benefits to be had from such experiments, it still would not justify experimenting on human beings. Although the 2016 Democratic Party platform was silent on this issue, the previous one wasn't. It extolled President Obama for issuing an executive order repealing the restrictions on embryonic stem cell research. And where does Hillary Clinton stand on this?
So let me be very clear. When I am president, I will lift the ban on stem cell research.
Bear in mind that adult stem cell research has never been banned. The only one that is banned is embryonic stem cell research. Let's talk about human cloning. Attempts for obtaining a human being without any connection with sexuality through twin fission, cloning, or parthenogenesis are to be considered contrary to the moral law, since they are in opposition to the dignity both of human procreation and of the conjugal union. Human cloning also involves abortion because the rejected or unsuccessful embryonic clones are destroyed, yet each clone is a human being. Now, the Democratic Party platform is also silent on human cloning, so you wouldn't think it's a big issue. However, the Human Cloning Prohibition Act was sponsored by a Democrat, Representative Diana DeGette out of Colorado. And so it says it would have prohibited any person from performing or attempting to perform human cloning. That sounds good, but it was opposed primarily by Republicans, with some Democrats joining. The bill's definition of human cloning was the implantation of the product of human somatic cell nuclear transfer technology into the uterus. In other words, it was a definition of cloning that was so narrow that it only banned that one procedure. So critics of the bill noted that this bill would actually create federally authorized cloning labs. So that's why the bill was opposed by those that are actually against cloning. We've tried to pass the Save the Puppies Act. It doesn't always save the puppies. What about homosexual marriage? True marriage is the union of one man and one woman. Legal recognition of any other union as marriage undermines true marriage. And legal recognition of homosexual unions actually does homosexual persons a disfavor by encouraging them to persist in what is an objectively immoral arrangement. You know, we all want to sound compassionate and say they can love who they want to love. Absolutely, they can love who they want to love. Nobody wants to deny homosexuals the rights to anything. They can set up marriage-type arrangements through the laws, through trust documents, through lots of ways. But when you change the definition of marriage itself, you are messing with the foundations of our entire civilization. Because if you look at the Bible, it opens with a marriage in the Garden of Eden. It culminates with a marriage with Christ on the cross as the Lamb at the Last Supper, as offering himself for his bride, the church. And then it culminates again in Revelation, where Christ and the church are wed. If you take away the meaning of marriage, our children will never understand the Bible itself. This is about an attack on the foundations of Christianity. And our opponents understand that.
I mean, I agree. It's a no-brainer that we should have the right to marry. But I also think equally that it's a no-brainer that the institution of marriage should not exist. So that causes my brain some trouble. And part of it, why it causes me trouble, is because fighting for gay marriage generally involves lying about what we're going to do with marriage when we get there. You know, because we lie that the institution of marriage is not going to change. And that is a lie. The institution of marriage is going to change, and it should change. And again, I don't think it should exist.
So what's been lacking from the church? Well, the church has a document out there, Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship. And in that document, on paragraph 64 out of 92, they actually list off the intrinsic evils that I'm referring to today and point out that it is never licit to vote for these things. However, what it does in putting it 64 paragraphs in the midst of 91 other paragraphs, it conflates all of the issues. It's that seamless garment argument that was promulgated by Cardinal Bernardin many years ago that says anything you do to the human life at any point in its life is equal to what you do at the beginnings and end of life with abortion and euthanasia, and that is not true. What happens between birth and death are policy discussions. Do we support unionization for the care of the worker? Do we support welfare or welfare reform for taking care of widows and orphans? These are policy discussions we can have. There is no policy discussion when it comes to intrinsic evil. It is in all times, in all places, evil. So what has the church been doing? Well, what if I came out and told you that the church just endorsed tax cuts, strong national borders, and a strong Second Amendment position of self-defense? You would logically conclude that the church is coming out in favor of the GOP, that they support the Republican position. Well, what the church has actually been doing is supporting the Democrat position. Long time now, they've supported climate change, immigration reform, and Obamacare as three major issues, and gun control. Those major issues are understandably confusing the faithful. Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, before he was Pope Benedict XVI, said, "While the church exhorts civil authorities to seek peace and not war, and to exercise discretion and mercy in imposing capital punishment on criminals, it may be permissible to take up arms to repel an aggressor, or to have recourse to capital punishment. There may be a legitimate diversity of opinion, even among Catholics, about waging war and applying the death penalty, but not, however, with regard to abortion and euthanasia. These are not areas where we should have disagreement between us." So what can we do about it? Well, number one, we can encourage our clergy to speak out forcefully against the Democratic Party. They want to go down that road and say you can't support abortion, you can't support euthanasia, but they stop short of saying who it is that is actually sponsoring those as public policy in America. And that needs to stop. Americans need to be told what is the truth of who is supporting what and how we can oppose it. And the church has been silent, largely, I'm told, because of 501c3, their tax-exempt status. Well, let's consider the tax-exempt status. Churches have been tax-exempt from the founding of this country because it is a fundamental rule of religious liberty that the government does not have control of what happens in church, not because of 501c3. It was Senator Lyndon Baines Johnson, a Democrat, in 1954 that argued the church should be included under 501c3 just to codify the relationship because the church has too much influence in the public sphere. And certainly we can see what's happened to society as we've removed the church's influence in the public sphere. The church needs to speak up forcefully and need to stop giving the government the power of a veto over what they say.
The best argument I've heard from the bishops so far about why they stay silent in these political matters is that it hurts their authority to take part in partisan politics. And I agree with them, it does. That is a great argument. The problem is, as I pointed out, they have been taking part in partisan politics by supporting the Democrat position. But this video isn't about the Democrat position, it isn't about the Republican position. This is about the church's position, opposition to evil. And there's one political party that's supporting intrinsic evil.
We need to educate our fellow Roman Catholics. We have a duty to participate in politics. We have a duty to be informed on the issues, and we are prohibited from supporting evil. We need to read the party platforms. We need to understand what the candidates stand for, and then we need to vote in accordance with our conscience in such a way that we don't support evil. And the only major political party in this country that supports intrinsic evil, all 5 of the intrinsic evils that I've mentioned in this presentation, is the Democratic Party. The church should speak out forcefully and tell people that. I wrote my book, Defeating the Culture of Death, with an eye toward people buying the book and giving it to your deacons, your priests, your bishop, that nice couple that sits next to you in church, that will march with you against abortion, that will say a rosary with you in front of an abortion clinic, but has a vote for Hillary bumper sticker in the parking lot. Those are the people that need to read it and understand what the issues are that they're supporting. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, without which there is no other right, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. This is why we have a government, is to secure these rights, first and foremost life. And they derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. So as we vote, make sure you understand what it is you are consenting to. Know who supports intrinsic evil and who does not. And make sure you vote your conscience in such a way that we can finally put an end to the culture of death. Marching in January is a wonderful way to show solidarity for an issue. Voting in November is when you actually end it. And honestly, abortion will end in America the minute the bishops stand up and say it ends in America. Thank you for your time today. May God bless us. May God bless the United States of America. And may God bless our church and her voice for standing against those who support intrinsic evil.